So I think with that, Brad from Stitch Fix, he's VP of Data Science. He's going to tell us about personalization in retail. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. My name is Brad Klingenberg. I'm here today from the data science team at Stitch Fix. Quite excited to be here. It looks like a wonderful program, so thank you for having me. So today I want to talk about personalization and retail, and I think Stitch Fix is a company really at the vanguard of a transformation across retail. And as a broader context, before I talk about Stitch Fix, if you look at e-commerce, if you look actually at a lot of industries, the bar for compelling personalization is really rising. We've had recommendations, of course, in a lot of different contexts at Netflix and Spotify, and I think you'll see that happening more and more into further and further degrees. And Stitch Fix is a wonderful example of a company that makes literal bets on its recommendations for our clients. As a retailer, if you want to compete on anything other than fast delivery and price, you need to offer something more to your clients. And for Stitch Fix, this something more is convenience and personalization. But it's really becoming a very interesting and challenging time to be a retailer where if you want to compete on anything other than just getting a package there quickly and getting it there cheaply, you need to be able to offer clients something in addition to that. And as a general theme, data science makes it possible to do personalization at scale. And I think Stitch Fix is a really interesting example of that, that provides some directions for a lot of other industries. So today, in particular, I wanted to share a couple lessons from Stitch Fix. The first being that feedback loops really help you unlock personalization. The second is that client incentives matter quite a lot. So for something like this to actually work, you need to make sure that the incentives and interests of your clients are actually aligned with your own. And finally, and this is kind of the larger theme, that especially for us, but I think for many companies and increasingly in the future, data, and in particular data science, enable personalization at scale. So before I talk about those in particular, let me talk a little bit about Stitch Fix. I guess just to get a sense, how many people here are familiar with Stitch Fix or have heard about it before? Great. So it's fun. You know, more and more hands go up every time we give talks. So that's a lot of fun. So Stitch Fix is a personal styling service. We're an online retailer, and the way it works is you come to us, you sign up and create a profile. You tell us about your style preferences, how you like things to fit, your spending preferences, and a variety of other things that tell us generally about the types of things that you like. And unlike a traditional retailer, you're not actually going to our website and shopping. We act truly as a personal stylist, and we'll send you things. So we pick 5 things that we think you're going to love. We send them to you, and you try them on at home, keep what you like, send the rest back. So it's a fairly simple model from the consumer perspective. The key distinction from a lot of traditional approaches to e-commerce is that you're not actually picking the things that are sent to you. So we're actually picking the items we think you're going to love, and of course we do that based on what we know about you, and you can make requests if there's particular things that you'd like. But this is really a very big bet on being able to pick things that people are going to love. So not just rendering a recommendation on a page, but literally putting it in a box, paying for shipping, sending it to a client.
These articles of clothing are made by you. They're not brands of.
So a wonderful question about our inventory. So we work with hundreds of vendors. So we have a very wide inventory. We do develop our own exclusive brands, and that's a very interesting aspect of our business. But we also buy a lot of inventory from market. So the basic way that we choose things for people is this personal styling model, where as a retailer, we hold inventory. We have warehouses across the country. And we based on everything we know about the client and the inventory, we'll pick things to send to the client. And behind the scenes is actually a 2-stage process where we look at the inventory, we look at everything that we know about it, and I'll talk about the important feedback loops that power that, everything we know about the client, and generate a set of recommendations and a recommendation tool for our stylists. So Stitch Fix has personal stylists that actually pick things for our clients. These are actual Stitch Fix employees. We have thousands of them across the country, and they'll interact with this recommendation platform that essentially tries to distill everything we know about the client and the inventory and help them make the best decisions. But ultimately, everything that we send to somebody is actually curated by a personal stylist. And so Stitch Fix is also interesting in that it's a really it's a great example of art and science working together, of human and machine collaborating in a very complementary way to pick things that are successful for our clients.
Quick question.
Please, yes.
Stylists are employees of Stitch Fix, or is it sort of another pool that you just have people join the platform?
So it's a great question. So who are our stylists? So our stylists are actual Stitch Fix employees. They work remotely and mostly part-time around the country, but they're actually our employees, and we train them, and a lot of them stay with us for years. So it's not like a mechanical Turk type workforce. It's actually our own employee base of stylists that work for us. And so, please, yes.
Remote is feasible.
Yes, yeah. So we have when I started Stitch Fix, I've been there, it'll be about 5 years in June when I started. All the stylists worked in our office in San Francisco, but as we wanted to grow the workforce, now we have stylists all across the country, and it works quite well. We have a lot of fun events and trainings where they come in to spend time in person, but most of the work they do is remote.
How do your customers pick you, or do you limit customers, or what if someone doesn't buy anything forever? Do you kick them out, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so the question is, so what if a client doesn't buy anything? What does that mean for the business? How do we handle that? So the basic economics for the consumer. So when you order a Fix, you pay $20. That's an upfront fee. And if you, for instance, bought nothing, you'd be out that $20. But if you buy anything at all, it's applied toward that. So it's only really lost if you decide you don't like anything at all. And then, of course, it's still up to Stitch Fix to make sure that you want to keep things, and that people who are getting fixes are delighted by what they have, and we'll keep enough things to make the model work. And it turns out to work very well. And of course, the core challenge of the business is improving the things that we send to people so that they like them more.
And what feedback do you get other than the returns? Do you get specific comments? Do you get pictures?
It's a wonderful question. I'll have a few examples and a few slides down. But so we get a lot of rich feedback from our clients. So of course we get this implicit, did they keep it or not? We get explicit feedback, this was too big, too small, too expensive, too inexpensive. Did you like the style? Did you not? And also freeform text, which is quite rich as well. So people can say, I didn't really like the way it fit on my arm, or it just wasn't for me. And in aggregate, that provides a fascinating source of data.
But you're not encouraging images, for example.
So no.
They tried it on and didn't look good.
Yeah. It's a great idea, but not something we currently have in the product. Okay, so that's the basic overview of Stitch Fix. I want to return to the 3 lessons I wanted to highlight today. And the first is that feedback loops really unlock personalization. And this is related, I think, to some of the questions about the data that we get back. So clients tell us about themselves in general. And so when they sign up, they tell us a lot about their preferences and the types of things that they'd like to receive. And so this is explicit data people are providing for us as they join the service. As we send people fixes, they're actually providing more and more data to us. So for everything that we send, you can provide feedback along a number of dimensions. As I mentioned, not just structured feedback, which is of course particularly useful for algorithmic consumption, but also freeform text, which is fascinating. So if you're working on the Stitch Fix inventory team and you want to understand what people are saying about a blouse that you've purchased, you can look at all this text in aggregate. It's a really amazingly rich source of information. So our clients, tell us about things through what they tell us up front, but then also through the feedback they provide as we send them things, and they have fixes. And of course, this enables a lot of virtuous cycles and feedback that helps us make things better. So for example, if we send somebody a blouse and she says, well, I like the style, the price point was just right, it was just a little too big. So we can take that feedback, and now we know something about the client. And when we're trying to send her a blouse next time, we know something about how things fit her. But in addition to that, we actually now know something about the blouse. And so if you look at the feedback that people provide in aggregate, we're learning not only about the individual preferences of our clients, which is, of course, the reason that people are compelled to provide feedback, so that we get to know them, so that we provide better and better selections for them as they stay with the service over time. But if we aggregate this information over our client population, we learn about our inventory as well. So if we have a blouse that we think is large, and we send it to 1,000 people, and 900 of them say that it's too small. Well, we've learned something about the blouse, right? It might not be the right size. And this is really interesting just to mention a little bit. So, of course, this information allows us to then do a better job choosing who to send that blouse to in the future. So, it helps other clients in the service. Very interestingly, so we work with different brands. We might decide, this blouse isn't really working for our client population. We should buy less of it. We should, avoid buying things like it in the future. And very interestingly, so we developed some of our own inventory. And so this is when the feedback loop really gets interesting. So if you actually control the blueprint, so to speak, of the inventory, and you're getting real feedback, you can say, well, we think clients would like the skirt a little bit better if it was about an inch longer. Let's just make it an inch longer. And you can take advantage of that feedback loop to actually optimize in this kind of evolutionary way inventory that we carry. And so we have a lot of feedback, not only to the basic problem of recommending things to people successfully, but also just choosing and creating a better set of things to hold an inventory in the first place. It all relies critically on that flow of information back from our clients. And I wanted to underscore, I think, what's easy to kind of overlook here, and that's that the incentives of our clients really matter in enabling this feedback loop. So our clients tell us a lot of things. So the feedback I mentioned, the explicit preferences, and it's important for us that they share it with us. And if you look at the Stitch Fix model and you try to apply it to a more traditional retail business, often you don't have this data. And is it that traditional retailers just don't think they need it? No, of course not. They'd love to have this information. So this detailed information about exactly who keeps every item and the feedback that they provide. And the reason is that it's hard to get it because there's really not a good reason for you to tell a retailer this detailed, structured information. It's really the alignment between the incentives of our clients and getting the product better over time that makes it compelling for them to do so for Stitch Fix. And I think it's really interesting if you think about a typical store. You go to the mall. Imagine you're trying to optimize that inventory. Think how hard that problem is. So what do you observe? Well, people walk in, people walk out. Some things will be sold. You'll be able to say, well, these are my best sellers. But it's hard to say much about who's buying it. Do they really like the fit? Is it just because it's cheap? What is it that they actually like about what they're buying? And importantly, you really don't know anything at all about what people choose not to buy. So if people have tried something on and say, this would be great if it just fit, a little more loosely, or if it had a bolder pattern, and all that data is just, of course, invisible. And so what we really want to enable is for clients to give us this information so we can plug it into those feedback loops and continue to make everything better over time. And of course, the reason that they do this is not because they love Stitch Fix and want us to altruistically want Stitch Fix to do well. It's selfish, right? It's in their own interest. They want their experience to get better, and that's the client promise that we have. We want to know people better over time, to understand your style preferences and how you like things to fit. And that's great because it aligns with our own interest of getting to know people, and then of course, getting to know the broader client population as well. And so it's really the second order benefit of your feedback, helps Stitch Fix and helps other clients that is extremely valuable to Stitch Fix and is only supported because of the fact that there's this first order benefit to our clients that incents them. And so what it means, for example, is that, we don't have to, have surveys and say like, oh, if you give us this feedback, we'll give you a gift card, please fill out the survey. People are incented to do that just by the nature of the service itself.
I'm just thinking of something like Amazon or Yelp. Any sort of comments forum. Seems to me that very often people just want to spew out their opinions because they like doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it is interesting. So I think here the incentives are aligned so that everybody who's using the service has a good reason to provide useful, helpful feedback. And it is quite true. I think some people like to share regardless of the incentive or not. And it is amazing. So I mentioned we collect free forum text, and it's just people. It's amazing. Some people are just so effusive with feedback. This is just a wonderful opportunity for them to to share, and it's really staggering the amount of information we get about various things that we send people. But really for us, for this model to work, it relies on clients having this benefit to themselves, where they actually want to provide this information to us. And it can be fun. So it doesn't have to be like a tedious survey that you fill out. We have some games you can play on Facebook Messenger where you rate things, and that provides us information. And this is actually, people love this. It's almost like a game. It really, providing feedback and preference data doesn't have to be a chore or a tedious thing. And in fact, this is actually quite fun for a large subset of our clients. So the last thing that I wanted to mention, I don't think it'll be really much of a surprise to anybody in the room today, is that data and data science are really empowering this at scale. So if you think about Stitch Fix, as a zoom out, like what are we doing? It's a personal styling service, and in some ways it's actually quite old-fashioned. If you think about how you might have purchased clothes in the past, you might have had a high-touch experience where someone helps you pick things and recommends things and gets to know your preference over time, and that's very much the spirit of what we're trying to do at Stitch Fix. But we want so much more. We don't want to hire, a tailor or a stylist in, every neighborhood and have them serve people. We want the quality to be uniformly high across all of our clients. We want to learn from this feedback so that we can make our recommendations and our products better over time. And we want to be able to iterate, right? So this is never done. We're always trying to make it better. And so we want to have a platform that we can improve over time. And it's really data and data science that make this possible, and so using an algorithmic platform really makes this possible to improve over time. So algorithms and things that you can test are very easily iterated. They're testable, so we can see if we change our recommendation algorithm, if we change the way we think about client sizes, does it actually improve client outcomes? This is an empirical question. We can just run experiments and find out. And replicable, and this is what I think is really interesting. So of course, if you think about how Stitch Fix works, it's this hybrid of human decision-making and algorithms fused together in this complementary way. But the fact that we have an algorithmic platform that we can change, you can almost think of as it's like a human algorithm. So essentially, what you put in the interface and the information you show to humans is almost like a feature engineering exercise for human consumption. How do you help stylists make better decisions? Just as you might think, how could I help this algorithm or this process create better outcomes? And the fact that we can test it, so we put a lot of effort into thinking about the tools that our stylists use and how do we help them make better decisions. And as soon as we make something better, we can roll that out to all of our stylists. And so we have this in contrast to a tailor or a stylist that might have great expertise, but it's kind of all by themselves. We have this platform where if we make an improvement to the way people work, we can just sweep it across our whole platform.
Does your platform or interface that allows the stylist to use it as a advisory, does it also take advice from the stylists themselves? Because in some sense, you might be an amazing stylist, and you see where I'm going.
Yeah, so great question about our platform. So we certainly try to learn a lot from our stylists. And I think it's a fascinating human computation problem to think about how to optimize this joint system of human judgment, which is very complementary to the type of algorithmic decisions that we make. And so we do get a lot of data about what do our stylists think, and it's very interesting, of course, to think when do the machines and the humans have differences of opinion, and what do you do in those situations? It's a fascinating set of problems.
Is there any stickiness? Sorry, didn't mean to. Is there any stickiness between customers and stylists, or is it just customers go to whatever stylist?
It's a great question. So we actually have a whole algorithmic platform devoted to pairing clients and stylists. And certainly, like if you like your stylist and have a good experience, it's generally the good thing to keep them together. But it also varies by client. Some clients care a lot about that. They really want to have a relationship. You can leave a note for your stylist, and they leave a note when they send you a shipment, so you can kind of develop, a relationship around that. Other clients, are just more transactional, like, hey, I just want some shirts. I don't really, want to have a detailed exchange with anybody. And actually, part of the product is, not having to do that. So I think it varies client to client what they prefer.
How do you know if when you make an improvement, it's actually an improvement, not a negative?
So it's a great question. So there's, hundreds of decisions that go into, creating a platform like this, and the actual algorithms that run on it, and we're constantly testing them. So wherever possible, we run, randomized experiments. In systems where that's not possible, we think really hard about whether there might be proxies or, kind of pseudo experiments that we can run. But for as a general rule, the gold standard for us is a randomized controlled experiment.
that, then have you tried an experiment where you see what's the value of the stylus if you do purely algorithmic versus?
So wonderful question, and really interesting one. What is the value of the stylus? What is the value of the algorithm? Could we decompose them? Could we run an experiment and figure out what is the contribution from each? And I'd say, I think we have a good idea of where stylus and algorithms contribute. We don't ever send fixes to people where there's not a stylus, though, because we have a commitment to making every fix great, and that involves both humans and machines. So just to wrap up, I wanted to mention one other thing, which I think is interesting. So Stitch Fix, of course, is a retailer, and I think there's a lot of interesting lessons here about the future of personalization and in the bar for greater personalization that we'll see across many industries. I think that there's also an interesting lesson if you look at what Stitch Fix does. So we have a team of almost 80 people working in data science and platform engineering. It's a large team, and our business, we don't sell data. We're not in the data science data. Our product is not data, but data is absolutely our business. And what we do internally, I've mentioned a few things about managing inventory, improving recommendations, but data science is actually broadly engaged with virtually every aspect of our business, from marketing to all aspects of managing our inventory and logistics. And so we have data scientists working on virtually all of these problems, and I think this is a trend that we'll see more and more over time, where data science is evolving from kind of a back office, research resource for an organization where you might say, I'd like you to develop this specific algorithm or solve a very particular supervised machine learning problem. And at Stitch Fix, we do those things, of course, and they're important, but I think we're much more broadly engaged with the business and work on things, what is the business optimizing? How do we measure if the business is succeeding? How should we make trade-offs? How should a business make decisions with uncertainty? And these are all questions that quantitative folks and data scientists are very well equipped to answer. And I think it is a little bit different from how a lot of businesses run traditionally, where you have kind of like a backroom resource of technical people. And I think so. Essentially, I think there's going to be a broader theme across many industries of data scientists breaking out of the lab and actually doing business. And I think in addition to the interesting business model that Stitch Fix has, is a great example of a place where data science is a first-class partner in running the business. And with that, I think we're just about on time. So thank you for having me.
So,
Please.
are you on a Stitch Fix fix?
I am. In fact, actually, everything I'm wearing today is Stitch Fix. Yeah.
Has Stitch Fix changed your view of what you should wear?
It's a wonderful question. So one thing that's very interesting, so these are actually slightly stretchy jeans. I would never in my life have sought them out, but I'll tell you, I'm never going to go back to normal jeans. It's
deeper, like I'm sure Stitch Fix is influencing the customers. Customers are influencing Stitch Fix to do what they want. How do you figure out where do I take this customer to?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think despite working at Stitch Fix and absolutely loving the business, as you might guess, I'm not particularly fashionable. I think Stitch Fix has helped me in that regard. So I think I enjoy having things suggested for me and being able to kind of get pushed out of what I would select for myself, which would be maybe an unending series of blue button shirts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, quick question, and then we will postpone to the panel discussion as well.
I was wondering about asymmetry, your earlier question about why does traditional retail not have this. My guess would be that you could optimize your inventory machine learning stuff on the basis of, let's say, 1% of the users who are the indicative ones, and then most users could figure out what they want just by looking at some of the inventory. So in other words, small amount of data each way rather than this massive data exercise. Is that your experience, that most of your learning comes from a few indicative people rather than the mass of it?
So it's a wonderful question. So I think for learning about inventory, you could certainly try to do some sort of sampling, where if you got feedback from a set of people who were near the decision boundaries on different things, you could learn about managing inventory without getting feedback from everybody. I think so. I think you could probably do with some downsampling there. For the recommendation problem, I do think it's actually quite important to have the preferences of each person individually, and the aspiration of Stitch Fix is really to know everybody personally. And there I think it's important for people to tell us, oh, this is too big for me, or I found this too expensive, so that we can do better recommending things over time.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to introduce the next speaker, and then Ramesh Johari here now is going to take over. So we, had, for a contrasting other view, so Stitch Fix is everything is in the cloud or in